It is now my pleasure to call upon greetings a shliach who made a very profound impression upon me in my travels. I was in Eretz Yisrael this summer, and every time that I've been to Eretz Yisrael, I really haven't had a chance to go to see the country. Chapsach amol zu und zwas to the Rebbe's brother, mechapsach zu the Kaisel always, to Minyan Maris HaMachpelah. I was there, but to go to see the country in 3-4 days that I'm in Eretz Yisrael, I never had the opportunity. This time when I was there, someone told me something, and the truth is that I am grateful to him. He said, you must go to the Golan. First of all, there are Yidden over there, and everybody knows what the Golan and Yehuda, Shomron, and Azov meant to the Rebbe and means to the Rebbe. You must go meet the Yidden there and give them chizuk. Through a chance, I had an extra few hours, and I went to the Golan. Standing there on the top of the mountains, I was really impressed myself, and I wondered in amazement, how could somebody in his wildest dreams think of giving this away to the enemy of the Jews? This is something I just couldn't imagine it. But that is not what I'm going to talk about now, because I met a shliach who I knew of from the book that he wrote, and I knew him more than that from the report of Kinus Hashluchim from some 20 years ago or so. There was a young man who was born in Crown Heights, learned in Yeshivas Rabbeinu Yankiv Yosef, and became a chaplain in the U.S. Air Force. In the Army or the Air Force? In the Air Force. And he was stationed in Alaska. So it's a yemelt gekocht about the shluchim that went to Alaska. And he, together with the shluchim, built a mikveh. The nachas ruach that the Rebbe had from it. He was a chaplain in the army. And as such, he came to see the Rebbe. And little by little, or lot by lot, he became a chassid. He became a nechte chassidische young man. Moved to Eretz Yisrael, left the Air Force, moved to Eretz Yisrael, and as the pioneering spirit of living in Alaska took its roots that he went to live in the Golan. And he became a shliach of Tziri Agudas Chabad in the Golan. He had a Chabad house, and he has a Chabad house in Chispin. But his parnasa, because it was so difficult, was from being a mefakeach, a supervisor for the Misrat HaChinuch. He was a principal in one of the schools of the Reshet. After Gimel Tammuz, this young man decided to give up a secure parnasa, and because of the situation in the Golan, and because of his desire to do the Rebbe's Ratzon, decided to become a full-time shliach. It moved me so that when I walked out of his home, I was pushing in tears. A young man should give up everything, not a fein Ratzon, to do what the Rebbe wants. So it is my privilege, pleasure, and honor to extend greetings to the shliach, to the Kinus Hashluchim, the shliach to the Golan, Harav Rabbi Yisrael Haber. Let's welcome him.
It's a great honor for me to stand before you, the shluchim of the Rebbe, from the four corners of the earth. I seem to have come full circle tonight because before the days of my experiences in Texas, Alaska, California, Tokyo, Spain, Portugal, and Ramat HaGolan, there was Eastern Parkway. There was Eastern Parkway, 516 Eastern Parkway to be exact, just 1 block away from where we meet tonight. My entire childhood and adolescence, my schooling and maturing all took place right in this neighborhood. And yet, my contact with the Rebbe and Chabad did not take place during those years at all. Shortly after our marriage, my wife Miriam and I found ourselves on our way to Alaska. More than 22 years ago, a very young Orthodox Jewish couple were on their way from New York via Dallas, Texas, to Alaska to serve as a United States Air Force Jewish chaplain responsible for the 49th state's Jewish military personnel and for all of Alaska's Jewish civilian population as well. The only rabbi for the entire state, and as was the case at the outset, the only Orthodox family in all of that faraway place. A paramount problem was that no mikveh existed in Alaska. The U.S. senator to the state at that time was determined that his Jewish constituency would not be deprived of a rabbi chaplain and informed the Pentagon that whatever it would take to serve and to secure a rabbi chaplain for the state, the Pentagon and the U.S. Air Force was to provide. Not knowing this, I was greatly surprised when, upon informing the Air Force at the Pentagon that we could not accept a position unless a mikveh would be built for us, my request was readily approved and was told it would be no problem at all. Buoyed by the good news, I contacted several of the major rabbinical associations in New York and was told of how happy they were that an Orthodox rabbi would be moving to Alaska. I received promises of help in going about the mikvah's construction, but when the time came for us to travel to Alaska, surprisingly enough, not one of the associations delivered on their promise. And so, with mixed emotions and placing our faith with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we began our journey. Our plan of travel was to pass through St. Paul, Minnesota. And that plan helped set our destined meeting with Chabad Lubavitch. My wife's parents are survivors of the Auschwitz concentration camp. After the war, my mother-in-law, as a young woman, came to America without her parents and most of her family who had been killed. A middle-aged, childless couple, Jewish couple, living in Minnesota, asked the highest commission to have this young girl come and live with them. When the by now elderly couple heard that Miriam and I were on our way to Alaska, they asked that we please visit them for at least one day in St. Paul so that they might meet me, as they were unable to attend our wedding a year earlier. Happily agreeing, we arrived in St. Paul on that day in Elul Tafshin Lamed Gimel. Realizing that we were Orthodox, they informed us that while we would be welcome to eat at their home, we might be more comfortable with the kashrus and accommodations at a place that had opened its doors just about 2 years previous, a place called Lubavitch House. We arrived at Lubavitch House of St. Paul, Minnesota, and after a few minutes had passed, two young Lubavitch rabbis welcomed us and asked where we were heading. We told them Alaska. Surprised, they asked what would we be doing there, and we explained our new position and everything that it entailed. Does the Rebbe know? Did you write to him? Not truly understanding their enthusiasm and excitement, I promised nonetheless that I would do so. They asked how they could be of service to me in Alaska. I thought this very strange. How could these two young people in Minnesota, already in my mind living in a midbar themselves, help us when even the large and powerful rabbinical boards in New York and the US had not. I thanked them, telling them that I don't think they could help us. We really just have one problem, but it's a major one. We have no mikveh yet in Alaska. No mikveh? No mikveh? No problem, they replied. You need a mikveh? One said, I'll build you a mikveh. You'll build us a mikveh? I asked jokingly. Certainly, he answered. I asked why? What is it that you do? And the young chassid answered, I build mikvaot. The two people I speak of are Rabbis Feller and Grossbaum from St. Paul, Minnesota. The door to Chabad opened slightly. Who are these people? Why do they wish to help? And while my wife was flying monthly on a Hercules C-130 transport military airplane, almost 3,000 kilometers each way to the closest mikveh, a mikveh was taking shape in Alaska on a major U.S. Air Force base, no less. I must point out that the Pentagon agreed so quickly to the request because they and the senator thought that we asked not for a mikveh, but rather a mixer. And after all, how much does an electric mixer have to cost the government? However, a military order stated mikveh, and a mikveh it would be. With Mesiras Nefesh, for more than 30 days, after months of planning, a young Lubavitcher chassid, leaving his wife and children, came to Alaska to build a mikveh. History had been made. For the first time, two Orthodox rabbis were in Alaska at the same time. Further history would be made when, upon the mikveh's completion, Harav Yitzchak HaKohen Hendel Shlita traveled all the way from Montreal, Canada, to be machshir the mikveh. Three rabbis at Elmendorf Air Force Base, Alaska, together for the first time. I asked many questions about Hasidus in general and Chabad in particular. Where do they get all this energy from? To get all involved for some people that they don't really even know in Alaska. And how was it that I, as a Talmud in yeshivas, I had not encountered any of this before. And then soon after, I received by mail a 2-page letter from the Rebbe himself. That letter, and many others we were zoicha to receive, have since been published in many Chabad publications. I could not fathom that the Rebbe himself took time to write to us and encourage us all the way in Alaska. A yechidus was arranged for us in Teves Tavshin Lamed Hey upon a short visit to New York from Alaska. Arriving at 7:70 at approximately 11 p.m. on a cold wintry night, my wife and I noticed many people waiting in line outside the building. Someone waiting for us immediately ushered us inside, and before I even had time to think, Rav Groner, who I had spoken to many times from Alaska, greeted us with a Shalom Aleichem and informed us, standing right outside the Rebbe's door, that we were next. Intense nervousness filled my being. What does one do? How does one act? What should one say? After all, our purpose was to ask the Rebbe for a bracha for children, as we were still without children. Looking around me in mild panic, there I saw standing right behind us in line, Reb Leibel Bistritsky, whom I had known for years, for as a yeshiva boy on the east side, I always went to his store at recess to buy something good to eat. Haber, Reb Leibel said upon seeing me. Haber, you had to go all the way to Alaska to finally come to 770?
to hear.
And with that, the door suddenly opened, and we saw the Rebbe before us. As soon as the Rebbe greeted us, some of my nervousness vanished, and we were put at ease almost magically. For 27 minutes, which felt as if only 1 minute had passed, the Rebbe outlined many programs and activities which he wished to be carried out in Alaska. He spoke of the important work Miriam was doing in special education, which really surprised us both, as no one had ever informed the Rebbe that she was even working in that field. And the Rebbe asked my wife if she would take it upon herself to see to it, especially that all of the elder Jewish women in our area went to the mikveh, many for the first time in their lives. And finally, with a beautiful smile that beamed over the Rebbe's face, that radiated sunshine in the middle of the night, the Rebbe blessed us with a bracha that our bonim should grow up and become not only chaplains, but rabbis of great cities. With great emotion, we left the room unable to speak for many moments. 3/4 of a year passed, and while sitting at my desk in my office in Alaska during a bright summer's day, the door of the office suddenly opened just as the telephone rang. My eyes saw in surprised disbelief 2 very young Chabad rabbis standing right there in my office located just about at the end of the world. My ears heard my wife calling from the hospital with the news that we were, Baruch Hashem, expecting a baby. In that moment of incredible emotion, not only had the Rebbe's bracha been fulfilled, but he actually sent 2 emissaries to be there with us at the very time of its fruition. Those 2 young men became lifelong chaverim of mine, Rabbi Nechemia Kessler, Alav Shalom, and Rabbi Lipa Brennan, Sheyichya le'orach yamim v'shanim tovot. Coordinator of this very Kinus Hashluchim. During all those years, not 1 week has gone by that Lipa and I have not remained in constant connection. He providing a base here in Crown Heights for rabbis and residents of the Golan Heights to receive explanation and hospitality. The Rebbe was a constant factor at all of the births of our children. The doctors always professing their pessimistic views, and the Rebbe refuting all doubts and guiding us lo lefached and ein yisod klal lepachad for any and all of the doctors' prognoses. Baruch Hashem, today, our sons serve as examples to their friends in the Golan regarding the Rebbe and Chabad, and permit many youngsters and teenagers to draw close to Chabad through their friendship and understanding. For more than 13 years, we have been the Chabad family for all of the southern Golan Heights. While working in education, we have provided Chabad activities on an ongoing part-time basis. This past year, my thoughts regarding the Golan and my role as a shaliach crystallized. With the publication of my book documenting the many wonderful moifsim of the Rebbe for our family, and the special missions the Rebbe asked me to carry out, by being asked to speak at many Chabad functions throughout Eretz Yisrael, with my wife being a featured speaker regarding Hashlichus in Alaska and the Golan at the Kinus Neshei Chabad at Binyanei HaUmah in Yerushalayim, with Rabbi Leibel Groner's visit to the Golan, followed up by Rabbi Kotlarski's visit, I realized that I must provide a full-time Beit Chabad activity for Ramat HaGolan. With the great assistance and trust of Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Aronov and his dedicated staff at Tzirei Agudat Chabad Be'eretz HaKodesh, responsible for over 200 Batei Chabad in Eretz Yisrael, Beit Chabad Chispin Udrom Ramat HaGolan has become a reality. Just 1 week ago, a building in Chispin to serve as Beit Chabad for the entire southern Golan, 2 kilometers from the Syrian border has been secured. As was stated by my wife in her address at the Kinus Hashluchim Banquet in Yerushalayim, Chabad, by its very name, is intrinsically part and parcel of the Golan. 3 sources of water for Eretz Yisrael flow through the Golan: the Chatzbani, Banyas, and Dan. The Chatzbani, Banyas, and Dan, Rashi Tevot, Chabad. Fellow Shluchim, the Rebbe has stated emphatically over and over, more than anyone else in the world, that even the smallest bit of land of Eretz Yisrael may not be handed away. Everyone here tonight, from the many continents, countries, and cities, you here tonight, you are all Ramat HaGolan, you are all Yehuda v'Shomron. At the outset of the political cloud hanging over the Golan, where 32 Batei Knesset from the times of the Mishnah and the Gemara have been found, the Golan, where more than 17,000 Jews in 32 communities have been living, the Golan, where the brave Jews of Gamla fought for 2,000 years ago. At the outset of the present government's political cloud, I wrote to the Rebbe in Tafshin Nun Bet, relaying the worries of the residents of the Golan. The Rebbe's answer, received within hours, was Lo lefached u'lihisha'er bimkomam, not to be afraid and to stay in your places. The next day, we received a reply, lefarsein b'haskama, to publicize with the Rebbe's permission the following: Harebi Milubavitch, Korei L'kol Toshavei Ramat HaGolan, L'hiyot Chazakim, Lo Lefached Mikol HaMa'oraot HaAchronim, U'lihisha'er B'mkomam, Eitanim B'kiyum Shlichutam, B'yishuv Eretz Yisrael HaShlema, Ad Bias Koyal Tzedek, Amen. And in conclusion, as a former U.S. military officer, I'm reminded of the time that a great American general, Douglas MacArthur, upon speaking before the Corps of Army Cadets at West Point, said that throughout his career, he was always energized morning, noon, and night due to his contact and thinking about the Corps, the Corps, the Corps. We, as Shluchim, members of the greatest Jewish spiritual force in history, are energized at all times due to our contact with the Rebbe, the Rebbe, the Rebbe. Thank you.
I want to thank Rabbi Yisrael for his most inspirational words. The Eibusher should help Yisrael. The Eibusher should help you, that you should have a Mordche, that you shouldn't have to worry about funding the Beis Chabad. We wish you Hatzlacha, that you should have the means to be able to keep the Beis Chabad running and growing and growing. Dinner is now being served.